If you're from Wetzel County, you've probably heard stories of the William Cemetery Witch. Since I first visited the cemetery last March, I've been wanting to cover this piece of local folklore, but haven't been able to find enough accounts of stories to do a full video on it. The one account I was able to find came from a Wetzel Chronicle article where it was said that if the iron gate around one of the graves was left open for more than 4 days, the witch would escape, fleeing to roam the hills and holler of Appalachia for all of eternity. And that's why I'm doing this video. If anyone has any information on the various stories and urban legends surrounding the William Cemetery, please email it to me or leave it in the comments below. The hills of West Virginia have a long history of stories of witches and witchcraft. While some of the tales come from early European settlers and to a lesser degree Southern voodoo traditions and folklore brought to the area by former slaves. The tales that I am going to feature in this story were gathered by the West Virginia folklorist Ruth Ann Musick and featured in the spring 1974 issue of Appalachian Journal. One of the tales involved a witch that lived in Monongah, West Virginia. The town, while most well known for its mine disaster, one that was the deadliest in United States history, the town was also a massive mixing pot of Mediterranean and Eastern European peoples. This story involves a young girl who questioned whether or not she had abilities to perform witchcraft. It seems as though in some of these communities, witchcraft was something you either could or could not do. And sometimes hexes and curses could even be accidentally placed upon people who, unknown to themselves, were capable of performing witchcraft. In this case, the young girl went to the house of a particular woman who lived alone and who many in town suspected of being a witch. Upon arriving at the woman's house, the girl found the woman had hundreds of dolls around her home. When asked what they were for, the woman explained that each doll represented a person in town and that she was able to inflict pain and injuries on said people through the dolls. When the girl asked if she would be able to perform such curses and hexes, the woman tested the girl in various ways before sending her home and telling her to return in a couple of days. Upon returning, the girl found the woman dead on the floor of the home, clutching onto a doll with a nail sticking through its chest. The girl never found out if she had power to perform hexes or who in town this doll represented. In another tale, a family welcomes a new child into the world, which was cause for much celebration within the family and the community. Shortly after, the child became sick with an unknown affliction. The child's grandmother, who was knowledgeable of old country witchcraft, suspected the child might have had a hex placed upon them. After completing a ritual involving dividing of olive oil poured onto water, the grandmother instantly knew who had placed the hex upon the child. It was a jealous family member who had had trouble bearing children and had enviously looked upon the child, which had unknowingly placed a hex upon them. After confronting the unknown hex placer, the family was able to reverse the curse and the child returned to good health. Growing up in rural Wetzel County, I was even told a tale once of 3 witches who lived on one of the ridges far away from any town on the Wetzel-Doddridge County border. While none of them were married or worked, they lived in a large house and rarely ever traveled into town for goods or supplies. This was because they ran the house as an inn for traveling merchants and peddlers. Most nights, the merchants and peddlers would start arriving a few hours before sundown, but few were ever seen the next morning when the sun was back up. Tales of the sisters murdering and robbing travelers for personal gain or even darker, more sacrificial reasons quickly spread to the nearby towns. It's said that to this day, if you visit the place where the house once sat, you can still hear the wails and cries of murdered peddlers coming from an old well located on the property. When I was first being told this story, another individual interrupted the story at this point and proclaimed that the sisters weren't witches at all. The reason why the travelers were never seen come morning was because the sisters were actually prostitutes, and the merchants would slip off into the night to try and get home before their wives and families became suspicious of their late night antics. Either way, stories like this are fairly common across Appalachia. Often I'm asked why, as a historian, I bother with tales of ghosts, witches, skeletons, and other supernatural entities. Because these stories persist for a reason, whether they be ghost stories or urban legends or internet creepypastas, these stories have always persisted. Whether for entertainment, to serve as a warning, or to try and deter ordinary boys from spying on traveling merchants entering and exiting a particular house of ill repute, these tales are an important part of folklore and oral history. To remove the superstitious and the supernatural from folklore is just as condemnable of a sin as glossing over the uncomfortable and atrocious subject matters of history. Plus, let's be honest, who doesn't enjoy a good ghost story, especially during this time of year? I hope you enjoyed this series of ghost stories. Like every year, I have thoroughly enjoyed researching them, going a little bit deeper into the historic backgrounds of a lot of these tales and why they persist, where their origins might have originated come from. And if you've enjoyed this series of ghost stories, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and check out my entire playlist of other West Virginia ghost stories, monster stories, and haunted places that I have visited. Also, if you have any information on the Witch of the William Cemetery of Wetzel County, West Virginia, let me know in the comments or email me with the email that can be found on the channel page or in my links in the description down below. But until next time, stay wild, stay wonderful, stay spoopy, and I hope we can talk again very, very soon.